Hello, everyone. Good morning once again. Welcome to part two of our English series. We started yesterday. The part one was related to one of the games I played in the tournament 12 years back, and also lately a game last Sunday. And in this episode two, or part two, we'll go deeper into the dragon, the reverse dragon. Yeah. Let's also take a look at how you play the dragon as black, okay, and compare it when you're playing it as white. Okay, when you're playing the dragon as black, you will see this position: knight f3, knight c6, d4 takes on d4, knight takes d4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, bishop e3, knight f6, bishop into c4, castles, and then you have this f3 and going for the Yugoslav. d6, queen d2, bishop d7, castle 68, and bishop b3. This is the typical dragon as black. Now, if you play the dragon as white, the good thing about playing it as a white is that you get tempo. All right, since white moves first, you're up a tempo. There's g3, she takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop g2, bishop c5, castles. This time black has to castle, because if we compare it, if black plays, for example, the move bishop into e6, then we have knight takes e5. We're winning a pawn. Takes e5, then we have d4, takes on c3, takes, let's say d6, we have queen a4 and something like queen a5. And bishop b7 is there. Now going back again, let's try to move back, okay, from the main line. Let's say here e4, c5. Let's go back to that position, for example. Bishop f6, knight, bishop c4, right? This is the white side. Now, if you don't castle, if you take on e4 as black, this is not possible when you're playing black. Why? Because after take, there is bishop b5 pin. Since when you're playing black, you're a tempo down. But it's different when you are playing the white side. I hope you're getting it. Okay, so that was one of the main theories in playing the English. Yeah, you can reverse the reverse dragon, for example. You get an extra tempo playing the white side of it. So knight is d5, bishop d2. So it's not possible. It's not possible for black to play bishop e6. All right. Now today, we'll give you an example of a game played by Magnus against Giri. I really like how Magnus played this game against Giri back in 2019. Okay, so Giri had to castle because bishop e6 wasn't possible. Okay, now we have the normal dragon setup with d3. Giri went for h6. Okay, knight takes d5. Queen takes d5. a3. Okay, there's some sort of, we call it a Dradorf, yeah, a combination of the dragon and the Najdorf. Remember when you play black, Sicilian Najdorf, you play c5, knight f6, d6, and a6. Now combine it with the move g6, bishop g7. Here as white, you have g3, bishop g2. So we have the combination of the dragon and the Najdorf as one. Okay, the main point is to play a5, so Giri had to stop it with, a3, b4. So Giri had to stop it with a5. Bishop d2, normal square for the dragon bishop, the dragon variation with bishop on d2. Queen e6, rook c1, typical in the Sicilian, rook c1 or rook c8 as black. Queen into e7, protecting the bishop on c5, bishop into c3, pressure on e5, so knight e4, e3, okay. Knight takes f3, queen takes f3, bishop d6, protecting the pawn on e5, queen h5. So Carlsen is keeping an eye on that e5 pawn. c6, Giri wants to develop his bishop, but is blocking the way of the g2 bishop to b7, so played c6, and Carlsen played f4. A pretty good move, opening up that line from a1 to h8 diagonal at the expense of that pawn. But it doesn't matter, because here Carlsen went for the g takes capture to open up the g file. Okay, there will be a combination of the rook and the bishop attacking the important g7 square. Queen takes e3, king h1, threatening rook g1. Here, rook d8 was played by Geary. It's not possible, of course, to play bishop takes f4 here because there's just rook c e1, and the queen cannot protect that bishop on f4. So Geary went for rook to d8. Yes. Okay, rook ce1 first. It's not possible once again to take this pawn because the queen will be misplaced here. That will be a target. Potentially, let's say, for example, bishop f8. Let's just say bishop f8 back, but there's rook d1. So cannot. You will lose your rook. If, what normal move could we play here? It's hard to find a move for black here. Let's just say queen c4, okay? But Carlsen now has this typical sacrifice. Bishop takes g7. If you play king takes g7, now f6 comes into the game. If king g8, queen takes h6, threatening mate. If you go back, bishop f8 to defend the mate, then queen g5, let's say king h8, and bishop e4. Threatens mate on h7, so cannot. And also, if you look at the position, this bishop is undeveloped. Yes, not developed bishop on c8. The rook on a8 is also just as a spectator there. Okay, so Geary went for queen c5, trying to exchange queens. Normally, the defending player would try to exchange as much as possible. But Carlsen, of course, when you are the attacking player, especially when you sacrifice a pawn on e3 here, you don't exchange queens, you don't simplify. So f5 at the same time also, it restricts that bishop on c8. There's no development for that bishop. When the bishop on c8 does not develop, it affects also the rook on a8. So bishop into f8, protecting the weak square on g7, bishop e4, a nice centralization by Magnus. The bishop will also help in the attack. We have to look at the two bishops now, two archers. So rook into d5, okay, practical play. Of course, you don't capture the rook. The rook on f3, the rook on f1 is protecting f5, bishop on e4 protecting f5. We have 3 pieces protecting f5, so no problem. But we don't go rook g1, we play rook to f3. It's the rook on e1 that goes to g1 here. b5, rook g1, all right. Geary tries to develop his rook and try to defend his king. Carlsen went for bishop f6, okay. If you play rook f g3, for example, here, I believe Geary will try to play maybe f6, yeah, but white could also go for queen takes h6. It's also possible, by the way. But Carlsen went for this move. Well, I like this move, bishop f6, not allowing this rook to defend on g7, yeah, restricting again. So g6, Carlsen went for queen h3, but here in this position, Carlsen could go for the kill straight away. And that move is rook takes g6. All right, let's take a look at the capture. Queen takes g6 check, only move bishop g7. And some kind of a Petrosian type of move here, bishop into c3. The retreat, not allowing queen c1 check, saves the king. At the same time, clearing the way for the pawn to go for f6. If, for example, you go, let's say king f8, moving out of the bin, there's f6. If you move back your bishop, maybe queen takes h6 here. If you go back to g8, then f7 is mate. Yeah, rook takes f7, queen h8 mate. Now looking back, okay, Carlsen did not play this. It could have been a brilliant win. But queen h3 is a win anyways. Simple way to win by Magnus. Rook d6 attacking the bishop, queen h4, although it was taking some time. Rook takes f6, exchange up, bishop into e7, just the Magnus style, yeah. It fits his style, simple chess. F takes g6, d4, d5, bishop into a attacking g6. Not so brilliant, but this is the Magnus way. Rook into c6, torture, rook f4. Rook g7, of course, resign, because here Magnus could just simplify with bishop g6, rook takes g6, rook takes g6, it's game over. If king takes, rook takes g4, bishop g5, and then I can just maybe capture the pawn in e4 and scheme over. So that was it, yeah? Again, the main lesson here is that when we play white reverse dragon, we have that extra tempo. Because going back once again, if we take a look at this one, if we go back, the main dragon is that, this is the main dragon. Here, black could not capture the pawn on e4 because knight takes e4, d5, we have that bishop b5 for white. But if you're playing the white side of the dragon, you are able to capture that pawn. So it's black who cannot play bishop e6 here after castle. Because you are already castled, there's no more pin on b4 because of that extra tempo. Bishop e6 again is not possible anymore. He cannot play the Yugoslav setup because now we have knight takes e5, and knight takes e5 we have d4, and winning a pawn in the process. After bishop takes, queen a4 and queen here. Bishop b7 is a target. Bishop also on e5 is a target. So you see a big difference. That's why I like the flexibility of the English, when you play also the reverse dragon. Because again, because of that extra tempo. Because chess is all about, for me, chess is about time and space. The more time you have, the more space you have, the more chances of winning. Okay, so looking back at this game, with that extra tempo, okay, with the dragon setup, Carlsen had this smooth, right, attacking game against Geary, sacrificing the e-pawn, using the g file. Because if Geary, for example, doesn't capture the pawn, for example, he plays a normal move like bishop to d7, then Carlsen can play rook lift on f3. If let's say you move the rook to d8, we can sacrifice now on g7, king takes g7, rook g3 check, yeah, king into h7, bring the bishop into e4, because if you push pawn in f5, there's queen g6, king h8, queen takes, queen into h7, and we can capture this bishop because you cannot capture an e4. Queen e5 is mate. So this is a nice model game with that reverse dragon as white. Very smooth attacking game by Magnus. With f4, attack on the g file, yes. Rook f3, rook g1. Although execution-wise wasn't that brilliant, but that was Carlsen's style. It depends on your style. If you want to be like Tal, you go for the rook takes g6 AD. Yeah. All right, so that was it. Yeah, that was our lesson for today. Part two of the dragon. Okay. Again, the main lesson here was that thanks to that tempo, black cannot use the Yugoslav setup with castle, queenside, bishop, e6, and queen to d7. All right, I hope you like our video for today, and next time we'll move into a different variation of the English. This is Coach Oliver once again. Have a safe day, everyone. Bye-bye.